Imagine you are sitting in a room full of people. Everyone is laughing, talking, telling stories that everyone else seems to understand, except for you. Not because you are not smart, not because you are not trying, but because a long time before you even knew what language was, something was written into you in a way that even you cannot read. You grew up in a house where the air always carried something heavy. Maybe it was the sound of arguments bleeding through the walls late at night. Maybe it was a silence that felt more frightening than the arguments. Maybe it was a father who was never there, or a mother who was always there, but whose mind was somewhere very far away. You did not call it a broken home back then. You just called it life. You only knew that this was what normal looked like. And then you grew up. You left that house. You thought you had gotten out, but something strange happened. You began to realize that the house never actually stayed behind you. It came with you. It lives in the way you react when someone gets angry, in the way you freeze when you have to make an important decision, in the way you quietly sabotage every relationship that is starting to go well. It lives in the voice inside your head that keeps telling you that you are not good enough, that happiness is always temporary, that people will eventually leave. This is not weakness. This is biology. This is psychology. This is something that modern neuroscience has only recently begun to decode, but that philosophers thousands of years ago already felt in their bones. And if you stay until the end of this video, I will share with you what I believe is the most profound paradox at the center of all of this, a truth that you may not be ready to hear right now, but once you hear it, you will not be able to look at your own life the same way again. To understand why people who grew up in broken families struggle in adulthood, we need to start with a concept that the British psychologist John Bowlby spent his entire career studying: attachment theory. But do not let the academic name fool you, because this is not just a scholarly framework. This is the story of how the human brain learns to trust the world. When a child is born, their brain is entirely unformed. It does not know whether the world is safe or dangerous. It does not know whether people are trustworthy or not. And the only thing it has to learn from is the primary caregiver, usually a parent. Every time that caregiver responds with consistency, warmth, and reliability, the child's brain records a lesson. This world is predictable. When I need something, someone comes. I am safe. But what happens when that caregiver is inconsistent, consumed by their own pain, or is themselves the source of fear? The child's brain still learns, but it learns a different lesson. This world cannot be predicted. People can disappear at any moment. Love comes attached to pain. And the best thing I can do is stay alert at all times. This is where most people misunderstand the issue. They think children from broken families are hurt simply because of the specific events that happened to them. The divorce, the arguments, the absence. But that is not the central problem. The central problem is that those events taught that young brain a philosophy about reality, a philosophy that it will later apply to every relationship, every opportunity, and every quiet moment. Have you ever wondered why you feel unsettled, even when everything seems to be going well? Why happiness feels like waiting for something terrible to arrive? Why you break what is working before it has the chance to break you? The answer is not in your personality. It is in the neural map your brain drew when you were too young to remember drawing it. And this is what makes everything more complicated. Something that Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was once a slave in Rome, touched on in his own way. We are not disturbed by events, but by the judgments we form about them. Your brain did not just record what happened. It recorded the meaning it attached to what happened. And those meanings, written into you before you had enough language to argue with them, are still running your life right now. Now, let us go deeper. Because this is where most conversations about this topic stop at the surface, And this is exactly where psyche theory wants to go further. The first mechanism is what psychologists call hypervigilance. When you grow up in an environment that is unsafe or unpredictable, your nervous system develops a remarkable ability. It learns to read the room extraordinarily fast. You learn to notice whether your father's voice sounded even slightly different today, whether the way your mother walked through the door was carrying anger, what the silence before the storm looked like. You became an expert at detecting threat, and that ability saved you back then. But the nervous system does not know that you have grown up. It is still doing its job. And so at 30 years old, you are sitting in a meeting, and you notice your manager's expression shift slightly, and immediately, a wave of anxiety moves through your body. You are dating someone, and they text back a little slower than usual, and you have already begun preparing for the worst. You are in a quiet period of life, and instead of resting, you feel restless, as though this calm is a signal that something is coming. This is not anxiety. This is survival that has outlived its usefulness. Your nervous system is still protecting a child you no longer are. The second mechanism is what the Hungarian-American psychoanalyst Sándor Ferenczi once described as identification with the aggressor. But in a broader sense, it is the tendency to unconsciously recreate the exact environment that wounded you. This sounds irrational. Why would anyone seek out relationships that mirror the environment that harmed them? But the human brain does not operate according to the logic of reason. It operates according to the logic of familiarity. What is familiar feels safe, even when it is not safe at all. And so the person who grew up with emotionally volatile parents is often unconsciously drawn toward partners who are emotionally volatile. The person accustomed to neglect and emotional distance feels uncomfortable with consistent warmth and instead gravitates toward people who keep walls up, not because they want pain, but because familiarity is the first language of the brain, and the brain always translates the world into the language it learned first. You are not looking for what is good for you. You are looking for what feels like home. The third mechanism, and this is the one that gets talked about the least, is the impact on identity. When you grow up in a house where your emotional needs are consistently unmet, you do not just learn that the world is untrustworthy. You learn that you are the problem. You begin to believe that if you were just a little better, quieter, less of a burden, your father would not get angry. Your mother would not be sad. The family would not fall apart. You turn everything into your fault, because doing that, in a strange way, gives you a sense of control. And that sense of control follows you into adulthood in the form of something that looks like responsibility from the outside, but is actually a deep, quiet terror on the inside. If I am not perfect, people will leave. If I allow myself to need someone, I will be hurt. If I am truly seen, they will discover that I am not enough. Why do you apologize even when you have done nothing wrong? Why do you make yourself smaller in spaces that you are fully qualified to occupy completely? Why do you feel disproportionate gratitude when someone treats you with basic kindness, as though it is an exception rather than the standard? Why does success feel like a burden instead of a reward? Because your sense of self was built on the belief that love must be earned, not received. And when you actually receive love without earning it, it feels unreal. It feels like something that is about to be taken away. This is the peak of the cycle, and it needs to be broken. But the way to break it is not what most people assume. The first principle is learning to distinguish between a reaction and the truth. Your nervous system will keep sending warning signals for a long time, even when the danger is no longer present. You cannot turn it off through willpower alone, but you can learn to recognize it as an old pattern running in the background, not as a fact about the present moment. When a wave of anxiety hits, instead of asking what is going wrong right now, try asking which version of yourself and at what age is feeling this. This is not a way of avoiding emotion. This is a way of placing emotion in its proper context. The 8-year-old panicking inside you does not need to be silenced. They need to be seen and to be told that things are different now. Can you offer them that? That is a question worth sitting with alone tonight. The second principle is learning to tolerate goodness. This sounds strange, but for many people who grew up in broken homes, the hardest thing is not facing hardship. It is allowing themselves to receive something good without waiting for it to collapse. The neuroscientist Rick Hanson describes this as the negativity bias of neuroplasticity, the brain's tendency to register negative experiences with far more weight than positive ones. Your brain was trained to survive, not to flourish, but you can retrain it by deliberately pausing inside good moments and letting them settle, rather than rushing past them. Think of it like watering dry soil. One watering does not change the ground, but a little each day, over time, something begins to grow. Was there a moment in the past week that you moved through without allowing it to actually reach you? The third principle is learning to tell the difference between familiar and good for you. This is one of the most difficult and most important skills that anyone who grew up in a broken home needs to develop, because not everything that feels like home is home. Sometimes the very thing that feels the most magnetic is the loudest warning sign there is. This does not mean you should distrust your emotions. It means you need to build a second layer of awareness, a quieter voice alongside the instinctive one that asks, is this what is good for me? Or is this what is familiar to me? Those two questions sound nearly identical, but their answers can be a lifetime apart. The fourth principle, and this is where many people resist going, is allowing yourself to actually feel grief rather than endlessly managing it. There is a significant difference between processing emotion and avoiding emotion, and many people who grew up in homes that had no safe space for feelings became masters of avoidance without ever realizing it. Busyness, achievement, control, cynicism. All of these can be subtle ways of never truly sitting with the most painful thing inside you. If this topic is resonating and you want to keep exploring questions like these, leave a comment below about what you are struggling with most. I read every single one. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time, because conversations like this one are the reason this channel exists. And now, the part I want you to truly listen to. Throughout this entire video, we have been talking about what a broken home does to you, how it shapes your nervous system, your beliefs, your relationships, and all of that is real. But there is a paradox at the center of this whole story that I have been holding back until now. Children who grew up in the most difficult circumstances sometimes develop capacities that children raised in safety never needed to build. A depth of empathy, because you learn to read other people's emotions from a very young age. A capacity for resilience, because you survived things that other people only encounter in stories. A sensitivity to injustice, because you know in your bones that children should not have to endure what you endured. An emotional depth, because you never had the luxury of staying shallow. This is not a way of saying that trauma is good. This is not toxic positivity. This is recognizing that wounds and gifts sometimes arrive from the same source. Carl Jung wrote that the wound is where the light enters you. And I think what he meant was not that suffering is desirable, but that the cracks in the structure you were given are the very openings through which you can see reality more clearly than those who have never been broken. The question is not how to fix what was broken inside you. The question is how to build something that is truly yours on the foundation of everything you have lived through. You are not a product of that house. You are the person who survived that house. And the distance between those two things is where life begins. No one can give you the childhood you deserved, but you can become the adult that child always needed.